Hey everyone, it's Terry. I've been posting a series of designs for my design center to get you feeling comfortable with my design center and to show you some of the creative designs you can create just using the built-in shapes in my design center. So let's look at this quilt block that I created. One of the things you'll notice is we have like a daisy shape in the inside, then we have a flower petal, another flower petal, and they're different stitches. We have a chain stitch, then we have a triple run stitch, we have a candlewick stitch, then we have this area, this green, that would actually probably be stitched out in a thread that's very close to the background fabric because I want the quilt detail. But for the little petals that you see in here, I would stitch them out in a different color so that you can actually see them so that they pop out. Or you can stitch them again in the background color and it adds a little dimension. Then you have more of the candlewick stitches and the background fill. So I'll close this and show you how I created it. But I'll save it to memory because I really do like this design and I want to stitch it out. So we'll go ahead and choose delete and let's go to my design center. And the first thing I'm going to do is go into my settings, and I've selected a 9.5 by 9.5 frame. Now I've also selected a grid that's going to help me to align a few things and make sure I'm on center. And right now I'm looking at this in inches. If you want to change to metrics, this is where you change it. But I want my view to be in inches, at least while I'm designing. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go into our shapes and let's select the 9.5 by 9.5 frame because this is going to be the boundary. So the first thing I'm going to do is to apply a no sew line to that. So we'll go in, select no sew, take the bucket and touch that line. Now what that does is it means that if I take a fill stitch, and I'll just show you that and select a fill stitch, if I take this decorative fill, and it can be any color, and pour it inside, I now have a container. So you want to think of having a container for those stitches. We'll choose undo. Let's go into our shapes, and the first shape that I want to use is this little daisy, I'm calling it, and I want to resize this. Now all of this is really pretty much visual, so you are the designer. You can create it whatever size you want. I'm making it small enough that it would be the center of a flower, so I'll make it about 2.5 inches. All right, and let's just make sure it's centered, and it is. All right, now let's go back into our shapes and let's select another flower. And there are a couple of options, but I'll choose this one. And I want to resize that one as well. So I'll go to size and we'll make sure it's centered, and then we'll resize it. And I'll make that about 4 and we'll make it about 4.5 inches. This may not be exactly like the last one, but that's the fun of this. And I did save the last one if I wanted to go back and change anything. So now while that's selected, let's go ahead and duplicate it. Let's go to size, move it to the center, and let's make this one larger. So to make it larger, we'll make it larger here. And we'll make that about 6.5 inches. Actually, I think I'm going to stop pretty soon because I want to add some other details, and this is getting somewhat large. So let me make that a little bit smaller. I'll make it 6 inches. Now, the one thing when you're doing shapes like this that you want to think about is it's easier to work on something when it's selected. It's somewhat difficult to select something that's like this shape when you have other shapes that are nearby, and you'll get used to that as you're working on it. All right, the next thing we're going to do is put a border around this. So we'll choose OK. Let's go back to our shapes. And I believe the border that I selected is in this category, and I chose this border, and we'll choose OK. Now we want that to be larger than the flowers, but we want to have a little bit of space. So let's go to size, and we'll resize that. And again, all of this is very much visual. It's really entirely up to you. I can already tell this is going to be slightly different than the last one, and I might change it just to make it a little different. Okay, let's choose OK. Now let's go back, and the last shape that I had was one that was selected here. It's like a little teardrop. There's 3 of them. Now, whenever I have something like this, what I like to do is, first of all, resize it, because I'm thinking about where I'm going to place it. Let's just make it about 1.5 inches. And now what I'm going to do is move it up. So if I move it, say, in this corner here and rotate it a little bit, it needs to be smaller. So let me actually make it even smaller than it is. I'll make it about 1.3, and let's see if I move it, it'll fit in this corner, or if it would fit here. I may have to make it just a little bit smaller. All right, that's a good size. Now what I'll do is I'll choose OK, and while it's selected, let me rotate it at an angle. So I could place it like right here, and that would look pretty good. I did have it inside this design on my first design, but I think what I'll do is place it here. And if I decided I don't want to have all of that teardrop, what I can do is I can delete part of it. But I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and leave it like this. Now, what I'm trying to do is just visually, that's a hard word to say when you're tired, trying to line this up. And I'll leave it there and choose OK. Now what I want to do is duplicate it, and let's move one down here, and we're going to rotate it. So we'll go to rotate, and again, we're just trying to visually line it up. And it may not be perfect, but you'll get an idea. Like, I can tell already this one needs to be moved over or nudged a little bit. But for the purposes of this video, I'm not going to do that. All right, we'll go ahead, and if you did want to change it, what you can do is undo. Let me show you this. And now it's selected. Now let's move it, because I'm one of these people that sometimes when something bothers me, I can't stand it. So what I'm trying to do is move it over some so that it's more in that corner, and I think I need to rotate it just a tad more, so we'll rotate it a few degrees. That looks better. All right, and what I'm doing is I'm peeking at how much is exposed on those corners. All right, so now what we're going to do is duplicate it. We'll move one down here, and we'll rotate that. We'll rotate it 90 degrees. Let's move it into the corner here. That looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and duplicate it again. We'll move it over here. Let's rotate it. All right, and let's duplicate it one more time. All right, that all looks like it's very close. So now we're ready to start applying stitches. So let's start applying our stitches. And the first thing I did, I think I had a little chain stitch on the inside, so let's do that. We'll select a thread color and I'll make it the chain stitch, and we'll choose purple and just take the bucket and apply that to the outline on the center flower. The next flower was just a triple run, I believe, so we'll choose a different color for that. We'll choose this hot pink, choose a triple run, choose OK, and we'll take that and with the bucket we'll apply it here. Now let's go ahead and apply it to these petals as well. So we'll use the same stitch type on those. Now with the batting, what will happen is this will create some dimension for us. Now let's go back and choose a different color. We'll choose blue, choose the candlewick stitch. Let's apply it here. And let's choose a different color. And we'll go ahead and make that a red. And we'll leave it on the candlewick stitch and we'll apply that right here. Now let's apply our decorative fills. So we'll choose a light blue, and the fill that I used on the outside was number 7. So we'll select that and choose OK. We'll take the bucket and let's just apply that here. All right, now all we have left is one more area, so we'll go back and select another decorative fill. I just chose one that I thought was a busy pattern because I wanted to have some details, so I chose number 20. One of the things you can do with this is play around. You can change stitches and get something that you really like. This chooses teal, we'll choose OK, and we'll apply that right here. All right, so let's choose next. And now what we're looking at are the stitches. Now this is where you could leave the outline stitch on, and what that will do is put an outline around the outline of the design, but it also outlines some other areas, and for that reason I typically turn this off. And I am going to resize that to 150%, so give me a moment to do that. And sometimes you have a little bit of delay. That's because our machines are redigitizing. And we'll choose OK. All right, the next selection is going to be the next decorative fill. The only thing I'm going to do with that is turn off the outline. We'll choose OK. Now we have the running stitch or triple running stitch. For all of the triple running stitches, I'm going to leave them the same size. So we'll link everything together and you can see they're all selected. Now this is where you might want to go look at the stitch length. I can do this by changing it to millimeters and choose OK. This is 2 millimeters. And I think what I'm going to do is bump it up to 2.2 and choose OK. All right, now let's select the next stitches. What you'll do is you'll go back through all of these that it's selecting again. We're now on the candlewick stitches. I want to make that larger. So I'll make that, let's make it 5 millimeters. And we'll see how that looks and choose OK. And then we can also change the spacing if we want. And I'll make the spacing about 1.8 millimeters and choose OK. All right, and now let's go ahead and look at the last candle wick stitch. So here it is. It's 4 millimeters. I do want it to be smaller, but I also want it to be spaced apart. And let's just make that spacing 2 millimeters and choose OK. So we'll see how that looks. All right, I like that. So let's save it to memory. And I'll save it to my machine. We'll choose set. That's going to take us to embroidery. Now let's look at this and how it would play out. So we'll make it larger. You can see what the design looks like. If you wanted to have an outline around this instead of making it a no-sew line, make it a double run. And you can use the same color that you use for the thread for this basket weave. Okay, we'll watch it play out. And let's put it on speed 2 and let's see how this plays out. So one of the things you'll notice is that the machine is filling in with the decorative fills first. And that's one reason why I like to do this with batting, because what happens is you have some push and pull with embroidery stitches, but these aren't so dense that it's going to make everything bunched together. And I really think this would be a pretty design. I hope that you make it and post it. And Just Stitching with a Brother Luminaire. I'm Terry, and thank you for your time today.